In this video, we're going to take a look at binding our geometry. Now, another term for binding geometry is also weighting our geometry. It's the process of attaching our joints to the geometry itself. Once the joints or skeleton are attached, we can then use those joints to move or articulate our geometry. So the joints themselves will drive the vertices. Now we can control how much influence each joint has over a particular vertex. Typically, we use weight values that range from 0 to 1. 0 meaning that the vertice has no weighting from a particular joint, or 1 where it's being weighted 100% by a particular joint. Now most of the time, we try to find a delicate balance between multiple joints and how they influence a single vertex. So one vertex might be affected by 2 or 3 or even more joints. So it might be a 0.2, a 0.3, a 0.5, all of which would total a value of 1. So that's what we're after here. And we're just about ready to bind our geometry, but we want to make sure our skeleton and our model is good, because after we bind, it can be a little difficult to go back and make changes to the geometry or to the skeleton. It involves tearing everything apart and then putting it back together again. There are certain things that we can change after the fact, so it's not detrimental that we get everything perfect. But one thing I do want to do, just as kind of a housekeeping thing, is I want to rename my joints. I already have some of them renamed. That joint there is the body joint. This is left leg. We don't want to have a lot of joints out there that are called joint. It becomes very difficult for us to understand which joint is what. That can be really confusing. I'm going to bring up the outliner, and I'm going to select the very last joint there, the tip of the wing, right-click in the outliner, and choose Reveal Selected. That's going to fly me right to the end and basically expand that entire hierarchy for me, so I don't have to go back through here and click all these plus and minuses. I then want to select each joint as I want to rename it. So ultimately, we're going to have a numbering order like we kind of see here, but something that makes a bit more sense and not so disjointed. Select the first joint, and then we'll go through and select them all. I want to use the renaming tool, and it's actually closed up right now. It's this one right here. So we just want to expand that field, and you can click on this icon here and choose Rename. And then it should give you a name inside of there. So we're going to rename these. I'm going to choose L_wing, and we'll just add a little extension there, capital JNT. And I'm going to put 1 and hit enter. Now that renamed my joints, and actually I got a little extra information there that I didn't want. So I'm just going to undo that. Just retype that real quick, and we won't include the 1 this time. Let's just do left wing joint and hit enter. There we go. That's exactly what we're looking for. So all of those get renamed, and then they're sequentially numbered. Jump over to the other side. We'll do our same little trick here. Just do reveal selected based upon the last joint in the hierarchy, and select them in the order that you want them to be renamed. And then we can go through and rename them. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to select now the root of the skeleton, and then I'll hold Shift and select my geometry. And we're going to go up to Skin, and I want Bind Skin. And I want to open those options. There's going to be a few things that we need to adjust here. Right at the top, we have Bind to Joint Hierarchy. That's good by default. But if I just wanted to do a selection of joints, I can do that as well. And we can do an object hierarchy, which means that I can actually use other pieces of geometry to drive my crow. It doesn't always have to be joints, but joints have some extra abilities, so we tend to use joints the most. Next, my binding method here, we're going to choose the geodesic voxel option. This is an advanced option, but most of these here, they're pretty automated. There isn't a whole lot that we have to do or modify with them, but the geodesic voxel option is kind of cool. It's internally going to convert our crow model into a bunch of voxels. So what's a voxel? Well, in essence, it's going to fill this crow model with a bunch of small little cubes. All those cubes are going to represent my model. And it's going to use this new cube-shaped object here in order to determine how the weighting will get distributed for these bones. All of these methods do that exact same thing. They all figure out how to distribute the weight, but the geodesic voxel actually takes into account the volume and shape of the object, where these other ones here are just based upon other things like the distance or how they are in the hierarchy. And even heat map is a bit more of a distance type method. So the geodesic voxel is the most complex one, and we can get some pretty good results using it. Ultimately, we're going to have to come back in and do some fine tuning. None of these options are going to give us a perfect bind. For the skinning method, we're going to change this to dual quaternion. And the reason why we want to use that is because the dual quaternion algorithm tries to retain the volume of the shape of the surface. If we have classic linear, it does not. If we were to take the joints here and twist them, the geometry would completely lose its volume and collapse in on itself. Using the skinning method with this dual quaternion, it retains its shape and does not collapse in. Now, certainly you can keep twisting, and obviously it will, but that's kind of a different effect. You're not going to lose the actual volume. Normalize weights. We can set this to interactive or post, and we'll actually look at that a little bit more detail when we actually go in and paint weights. I'm going to go ahead and just set that to post for right now. And everything else is pretty good here with the exception of the resolution, and that's the resolution of that geodesic voxel. I'm going to increase this a bit. I'm going to bring that up to 512, and I'm going to hit apply. And it will take a little while for it to compute. It has to build that voxel model first, and then it tries to figure out the weighting. All right, it's done. That took less than a minute for it to compute. Now I can see my bones are actually color mapped so that I can easily identify the differences and where they're located. I'm just going to grab that wing there and rotate that up. And you'll see that the geometry now moves with it. And again, the weighting is not perfect here. Let's go ahead and select a bunch of these joints. We're going to have to clean up and do a little bit of weight corrections here, but you can see not too bad. He could fly. And the rest of our parts, pretty much the same there. Some of the wing is actually moving with the tail. Because we have such low geometry, that actually might work out, but we'll go in, do a little bit of refinement here. All in all, we have a pretty good skeletoned crow.